If your margins are tight, your COGS probably suck. Many brands we speak to, they don't truly examine or audit their inventory landed cost as seriously as they should be. But the issue is that your COGS drives your entire strategy, from paid ads to cash flow to execution, everything. We just did an audit. We added $200,000 on bottom line. My name is Jassim Isa. I'm the CEO and founder of Voadera. We purchased over $40 million in inventory last year, and we ran an audit over our entire portfolio. And here are 7 lessons that we learned. And stick around to the last one, because that's actually where we found around $40,000 in savings. To give a little bit of backstory, what happened is basically we were analyzing our P&L for last year, and we ran an audit. We wanted to see where leakages were happening. Obviously, selling at the velocity we do, we're at a lower margin already, so we have to examine every line item very rigorously. And the one right under our nose, obviously, that's consuming the majority is going to be COGS. So that's where we did a very deep dive. We hired a team of around 6-7 people, and we basically was like, if this is where we can get the most leverage, because if we're spending $40 million on that, all the other OPEX is maybe what, $10-15 million. So obviously that's where we're going to find the most leverage to get the biggest improvements. So we dedicated a team towards it. We ran an audit, and here are the 7 principles that we got from it. The first principle is placing COGS front and center. When COGS are compromising, especially in inventory businesses for e-commerce, they're compromising around 70 to 80% of your overall expenses. So you have to prioritize it and evaluate it consistently. It should be a weekly KPI that you're reviewing. How can I do anything about this? We are now running at least annual audits on our entire catalog for seeing how we can improve COGS, and I'll mention the other stuff of how we do that, obviously, but at least running numerous bids, RFPs, how we can get better stuff, looking at the raw materials, which ones are necessary, which ones are components that customers don't care about. But all of that doesn't start until you're actually putting the COGS front and center and you get the team's eyeballs on it. We have a dedicated team, 5-6 people, just on improving COGS and helping our partners that work on it. One partner that we recently worked with, actually, they couldn't raise prices because they're a very price inelastic market, and they didn't have much of a differentiator, honestly, for their product. But where they were already losing is we found out that their competitors were getting the products a couple bucks cheaper than they were, and they haven't evaluated their COGS in years. They just thought that it's something fixed, they can't work around. So that's where we jumped in. We worked with them on it. They were able to reduce their COGS by around $3 to $4 an item, and they were buying it for $15. So that's 20% cost reduction. And we were able to put that money into better branding, all that kind of stuff that basically improve it. I actually made a video about how to win without crushing your competition. You can go check that here. Without lowering your prices, you can check that here. But that's the first principle, is making sure that the COGS is front and center, your team is consistently reevaluating it, and making sure that there is something you can do about it and prioritizing it. The second principle is to ensure that you truly understand your margin. You're running a SKU level analysis on each item. You're seeing how much contribution margin each single SKU is getting you. And contribution margin is simply the additional net margin that SKU is getting you. So you're not including fixed costs. You're only including the additional variable cost for that specific SKU. And this really has to be very detailed. There's so many miscellaneous fees. You can account inbound placement fees, it's more obvious. But then there's removal fees, disposal fees, different various ad fees, coupon fees. There's 2. There's a flat fee now, and then there's a variable fee. I actually also made a video about Amazon fees, the hidden ones. You can go watch that right here. But you have to make sure that you truly understand the numbers for each SKU. And this is extremely, extremely important, because you might think that you're actually profitable in a SKU, and then a few months in, you're running into what you think is cash flow issues because you're not having enough cash flow to fund it. But in reality, it's a profit issue. We had this with one of our brands. They had one SKU. It was a prospect that came in. They thought they had a cash flow issue, but they truly had a SKU that was draining their entire margin. So we cut that SKU, and then we reevaluated for cost improvements later, but we initially cut it out until we could figure out what's going on so they can get back to surface level and get back to profitability. So this is also part of the prep work, is understanding your margin. The third point is the spec sheet. So the spec sheet it's also known as, obviously, the specification sheet. This is something that you have to prepare. Make sure that you prepare this for all your products. It basically includes every single product, the raw materials used, the details of it, any details that you can include on this. It's very helpful. It's a template that you set up hopefully once for your products, but it's going to save you for years to come because it does all the prep work for you. Once you have the spec sheet ready, you can send it to various distributors and people and get quotes. Instead of jumping on every time, explaining the details of your product, explaining what it does, it's like a huge hassle. Instead, you do the prep work. Again, we're still doing prep to get everything ready, to get the details of your products ready, to make sure that you're getting accurate quotes, you're getting yourself hours of time on emails or communication, because the more details you include in this, the more you save your time, but then you also it's scalable. You can send it to 10, 20 people to get you quotes at the same time. And the fourth one is to make sure that you're doing an apples to apples comparison. I cannot stress how crucial this is. You can't go to two different, this is one example. We had someone, he was doing a plastic related product. It was kind of similar in the water bottle industry. His manufacturer was making it for him. He got really excited. Again, he made an issue in the spec sheet. He just wrote plastic and he didn't write the details, the specification of that plastic specifically. So he sent it out. He got really excited. Another factory gave him a better quote on it. It was around 15% discount, around a buck or two, basically, for this specific item. But the issue is the other factory, yes, they were using plastic, but guess what? It was recycled plastic. And recycled plastic is much less sturdy. So he had initially a 4.5 star rating. He sent a new product in. Guess what? His rating went down to 4.1 stars. The recycled plastic is much less durable, much less quality. But then again, he didn't have the standardized size in the spec sheet for his specific raw materials. Another example, just basically in shipping, we ran into this ourselves. We have cardboard boxes that we ship in. It's called ECT, Edge Crush Test. This is the raw material that's used for the box itself, or the specification that's used for the standards of the box thickness. So for example, a 24 ACT that can take around, I think, 32 pounds, but an 84 ACT can take, I think, around 130 pounds. I believe that's the numbers. I don't have them off the top, but basically what we need is a 32 ACT, because that can take up to 60 pounds, and that's what we're shipping to Amazon. So the warehouse manager, he got excited. He sees someone's cheaper. We ordered a sample of it. Thankfully, we didn't order a big order. It was very flimsy, couldn't handle our products. Then we realized, oh, we didn't include the ECT in the spec sheet, again, that we prepped. So this is, keep that in mind. You want to understand the specifics of the raw materials and what that entails, and you're doing apples to apples comparison. And we'll get into more later how we can do this obviously better, but this is just something to keep in mind. Now that we talked about the prep work, let's actually get into optimizing the prices and the supply chain itself. So the fifth principle is go local, go direct, get as close as you can to the factory, try cutting out as many middlemen as you can. And this comes into two parts. So part A of this is this could be related to trading companies or middlemen that come in the way of you and the factory. The closer you are to the factory, there's less people in between and the less people making money. The quicker the interaction points, the faster the feedback loop. There's obviously advantages to dealing with a trading company. They can verify this few people, but you have to have a contract that's suitable for you. One of my friends, he was in the office and school supplies industry, and he was working with a trading company that was overcharging him over the factory price by 40%. So he had lower cost items that were like $2 each, but that was still 80 cents a unit, and he was selling around $100 million a year. So you can imagine how substantial that fee was. And eventually it came up to him. He wasn't able to afford that trading company's fee. And instead of dealing with them directly, now he's basically dealing with them in different. But the point is that you want to be as close as you can, cutting out the middleman. You can use a trading company. Maybe you work out a flat fee with them, the 10% finder's fee, or 10% on the first PO, or a reasonable 5% continuous one. But also understanding when you're dealing with a trading company. Many trading companies act like they're the manufacturer when in reality they're not. So making sure that you verify that, and other people also act like they're the company, but they're actually just middlemen. So understand it. It's fine if you work with a middleman, but you have to understand the relationship you're working with, because your competitor, he could be going direct and getting that better cost. And the second part of this, part B, is avoiding the fancy, going more to the local options. Fancy options, the most famous one is obviously Alibaba. We had recently an issue where we were buying one of the plane mats we were buying. It was $40. We were buying it from Alibaba initially. We basically just took that price for granted. Some of our team members got complacent on it. When we were running the audit for last year, this was one of the items that stood out. And we got the spec sheet for it, obviously. We sent it to 5 or 6 vendors as an RFP. And the prices that came back were honestly very good and bad news. I mean, bad news we didn't do it earlier. Good news that they came back really well. It was around the $26, $27, $28 range. So imagine almost a $12 difference by going to these more local options versus the premium brand in Alibaba. Because the factories on Alibaba, they have to spend money on marketing. They have to spend money on marketplace fees. So they're eventually going to pass that cost over to you as a buyer. So obviously, there's a trade-off going more local. It could be a scammer, it could be bad material. That's something that you're going to have to verify yourself. That's where maybe you can make a one-time fee to a trading company to verify them. That's also another point to keep in mind as you're evaluating these options. The sixth principle is that proximity, relationship, and networking, they truly build leverage. When you are dealing with a manufacturer internationally, there's much less trust, there's much less interaction. It's more of a transactional relationship. And this leads to likely a few things, but worse prices, worst relationship, a lot of things that reduce the quality of your interaction with that said manufacturer. There's a few ways to get around this. The first one is obviously you traveling yourself, getting to know them personally. This is obviously the best one, whether that's going to a trip in China, visiting a few people, and this serves a few things. You obviously vet the product yourself, you're getting to know them personally, it makes them more likely to interact with you, they like you more, you're gonna get better prices, but they also give you better deals than they would to someone else. One example is we deal with this supplier, actually, they're in Canada. So just recently, this is just one example, but there was a 25% tariff rate, and it was gonna, I forgot the date specifically, from Canada to the US. I think it was sometime in April, but there was 1 day left to the deadline. There wasn't enough time to get the wire transfer over the next day. Because the supplier knew us personally and they know the people that we dealt with, they shipped it from the Canada to the US because we weren't going to pay that 25%, which is, it was around a $30,000 PO. So 25%, what is that? 26,000. So let's say around $7,500 or whatever. They saved us that fee by shipping it, even though they hadn't gotten the payment. If they didn't know us, would they have shipped it? Absolutely, almost no way. So that's the advantage of knowing the people, building the relationships, getting to know them personally. Now, if you can't do that, what's the next best thing? And sometimes it's actually the best thing itself, is getting a sourcing agent. So sourcing agents is an individual. They can either be a contractor or full-time employee that's on the ground in the country that you're basically going to do. And this does a myriad of things. Again, it does a few things. So one, they know which suppliers are legit, which factories are legit, which ones aren't. They know what the street prices versus the real actual prices are. They know how to negotiate in person, building those relationships. They have trusted people that they work with. They can do a quality inspection when the item is done. So this is a very, very good offer because they're always continuously there. But ideally, you're pairing both. You have someone on the ground, but then also you're visiting in maybe annually or maybe once every 2 years, perhaps. But at least getting to know the supplier you work with at least once, I think is very, very crucial because it really does make a difference. When they know someone personally, you're getting the extra deals, you're getting maybe the new releases, you're getting a little bit of a different treatment because, again, they know you personally, they like you, and that's something very important to keep in mind. The seventh principle is that you can and should negotiate way more than you think. The first price you got when dealing with a factory is not the same price it should be. There's changes that happen. One, the most obvious one, if you grow the brand successfully and you're selling way more, it costs the factory less to produce it. And they also trust you after a few years of dealing. So the initial price they give you should go down substantially. I've seen cases where it went down by more than 30% because you're ordering more of it, they trust you more, you know you're paying on time, they've hopefully had pleasant interactions with you, they hopefully even saw you in person, as you mentioned before this, so you should be getting better prices. The second thing, always keep an eye on raw material costs. Companies that do this very often are obviously coffee companies. I think Howard Schultz was mentioning something about this. Just in 2023, they reduced one of their contracts from $1 billion to $200 million because the raw material prices of coffee went down. So keep an eye on your raw material costs. If it's plastic, steel, check on that. See how it is on the raw market and see if you can lock in rates. And if that changes, obviously if it goes up, you kind of turn a blind eye. But if it's going down, you revisit your manufacturer, you talk to them like, listen, it went down, it should cost you less to make this. Let's talk about getting it up. And then always be willing to negotiate. There's plenty of factories out there. Unless you have some kind of patent, something or whatever, you should be comfortable sending that spec sheet out, RFPing it to numerous people, perhaps annually, and listening. Ideally, you still want to work with your factory. There's that trust, there's that relationship, but you tell them, listen, I got this better price from someone else. Let's revisit what you had. And 99% of the time, they're going to match it. They already have you as a customer. They already have the fixed cost there. They just want to produce more units. But again, you should always be negotiating, always be bidding out your product, and always have the mindset of driving margin through your COGS as much as you can. If you found this video helpful, I actually made a 25-minute masterclass on how to get the product from your factory's doorstep all the way to your customer's doorstep, step by step. And I think this will be really helpful for you. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more of these kind of videos. If you're a brand doing over $1 million, check us out at Voadera.com. We might be able to help you.